Hey there, Mingos. Sneaky Teak here with Sneaky Teak Weekly number 2. The second in a hopefully eternal, vaguely weekly, semi-unscripted, and mostly casual series of video blogs titled Sneaky Teak Weekly. Just a chance for me to sit down in front of the camera and address you, my YouTube audience. Give you some access to the man behind the curtain, look into what I'm thinking about Twitch, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. I think you get it. There's a description of the series down below the video. Today, I think I want to talk a little bit about the what and the how. Last week, in the first weekly, I talked about the why. I kind of gave my origin as a gamer and as a creator. I gave you the background for how I got it started streaming and a little bit of my vision, right? Why it is why, wow. You can tell that this is raw because I can't speak today. It's been a busy week, but I'm glad to be here. So bear with me. When I find my words, they'll be good. They'll be good when I find my words. Yeah, why is it that I make, right? Why is it that I make? And trust me when I say we will spend a lot of time over the rest of my content creation career talking about why. It's imperative that we do. The why needs to be with us all the time. But today, I want to get a little bit more tactical, talk about the what and the how. What am I making? How am I making it? What are the platforms that I'm making on? And how do I see all of my decisions fitting together in a strategy, a career strategy, right? So we're going to get a little nitty gritty. We're going to get a little brass tacks. Before I get into that, a confession. I always try to organize my points before any unscripted time in front of a camera, whether that be a Sneaky Teak Weekly or a Teak Talk at the beginning of one of my streams. And so I'll tend to sit down with a notepad and just take a note or two about what are my major landmarks? What are the things I want to make sure I get to? And today, for this weekly, I sat down at a notepad, and a page or two later, I realized that what I was writing was a script. So I promptly threw that out because I promised myself that I would not script this series. That's important to me, not because I think scripting is bad, but because I think it's more likely that I can do it every week if I really do sit down and just speak to you, right? And so that's my promise to myself, is to keep it as unscripted as I can do. But I guess I wanted you to know that that doesn't mean that it's going to be random. I have a point. I have a direction with every single weekly, even if it takes us a minute to get there, right? And so this week, the what. And I think I want to start with what I was doing when the stream was starting. Again, my first stream was a Friday, March 16th, 2018. And the first stream was just whatever I was playing. I played Battle Right. But over the next couple months, I kind of aligned around a 2-point strategy for game selection. And I will tell you right now, straight up, the most important thing that I did for years on Twitch, and if you are trying to start a stream, the most important thing you will do for years is game selection. Because that's how Twitch works. That's how browse and discover on Twitch work, which is a bit of foreshadowing to a later point. So I'm going to kind of give a quick framework here, and I did take notes on this because there's so many axes that I needed to write them down so I could remember them. And actually a bit of a plug too. If you want to join our free and open community Discord, there will be a link down below the stream. There's a channel in the Discord called Radical Stream Transparency, which is something I started quite a while ago with the intent to make a space to where people could ask me probing and fairly, honestly, sometimes taboo questions about stream and career, and where I could feel good about answering those openly. And so there's the point of bringing this up is there is a post in Radical Stream Transparency where I went into more depth on game selection. It's pretty good. And so if you want to see that written up, feel free to check that out in the Discord. And so when I talk about game selection on Twitch for live stream, I wrote down that I'm talking about 5 different axes, right? Kind of 5 circles that all need to overlap. I ask for each game, is the game fun to play? That's important because it's not going to be a sustainable stream if I don't enjoy myself while I'm playing the game. Is the game fun to broadcast? There's some games that I really deeply love getting into and exploring, but that I actually find a little bit less enjoyable to broadcast. Fun to play and fun to broadcast are different axes. Mostly because of that presentational layer. Some games are meant purely to be experienced, and so there's a bit of an absence when it comes to painting on that canvas rather than just staring at it. Game is fun to watch. Some games can be fun to play and fun to broadcast, but are they actually fun to sit and view? Some games are a primarily player's experience, and so I need something that can be a spectator sport, whether naturally or because I transform it into one. Game is actually watched. When I'm talking about game selection, I'm not just talking about fun and joy. I'm talking about strategy, growth strategy. And no matter how fun a game is to play and broadcast and watch, if nobody's doing it, it's not going to help you grow your stream. And we're talking about the early days here, particularly, right? And then finally, game has a sufficiently deep well of content. Some games are novelties. They're a flash in the pan. And that's actually not a problem. It's okay to have games which are fun for exactly 5 hours, exactly 10 hours. But they can be troubling for content creation because every game that you play is an investment. And so I tend to lean towards games that I know I can get some durability out of, that I can grow in and learn and then continue to invest in over time. But there's exceptions. The beauty of having so many axes to select on is that you don't have to reach 100 marks on any one of them. And lots of times I emphasize one of those axes over another, depending on my mood, depending on how I want to keep the balance of the stream. And that's okay, right? The goal is in the aggregate across all of the games that you play, across all of the hours that you stream, to fulfill those buckets. That's the plan for sustainable growth. And that has to be the plan when you're starting a stream. You have to be obsessed with growth to succeed as a content creator. But there's a catch, which I'll get back to. But didn't I say that there were two things? Okay, I talked about these 5 axes, but I said you're constraining yourself 2 ways, right? Get even more tactical here. I've given you kind of the 5 axes of games that we play. There's more axes too. The truth is, all of this is a bit of a ruse. I feel like this is japes, because even this is a radical simplification. It's a reduction of what I do and what other people do, because I could start listing off more axes. You talk about investment in the stream. You talk about technical investment in learning how to make a new thing, growing your broadcast voice. There are more axes, but those are the fundamental 5. But here's the pincer. Here's the other side of the pincer, right? Which is placement in the lineup. Because when I first started streaming on Twitch, pretty quickly I concluded maybe the most fundamental piece of advice I've given to other people starting up who want to establish themselves in a game directory, which is think about all those 5 axes and then choose a game where you can be number 2. If you're playing a game to where you're the largest stream in that game, all right, so let's say you've got 50 concurrent viewers, and there's a game that you're playing, and there's 70 total viewers, and 50 of them are yours. You're number 1. The problem with that game as a growth vector is that you've limited your ceiling. There's not a large population of viewers that you can grow into. But the classic example from several years ago, Fortnite, if you choose a game at your 50 viewers where you are number 1,000, right? You'll never even be able to see the ceiling to begin with. Nobody's going to trickle down to you because the fundamental flow on Twitch mostly, and there's more than one mechanism of browse, but for most people, when they're browsing, is they go to the game that they want to watch, and then they go through the first 1 to 5 streams and they click on one, and that's it. So you don't want to be number 1,000, but you don't necessarily not want to be number 1 either. You want to be number 2. You want to find a game where there is a large space of viewers to grow into, a large amount of interest and engagement, but to where you're not the biggest fish in the pond. You want to grow with it. This was a conclusion that I reached fairly early on, and it absolutely paved my early growth path on Twitch. It actually results in a much lower list of games than you would think, and so you need to ignore your own advice sometimes and explore around, because you'll learn things about yourself and your vision and your community. But early on with Darkest Dungeon, I was number 2, and when I was playing Slay the Spire, I was number 2. That's why those were so effective growth games for me. Later on, the rules change. And honestly, I'm probably at the size now where the rules have changed. Once your stream is big enough, it no longer comes down to just be number 2, because you need to think of, investing in your existing community, and you need to think of new vectors of growth. Which actually gets me to my next 2 big points. And all of this, ultimately, spoilers here, okay? All of this ultimately is about motivating the decision to make YouTube content. That's going to be the big take home, I think, from this particular weekly. I want to drive tactically, why am I here? How did I get here? Because I already kind of said that I love live stream. I like to be in that live environment with the lights and the camera on. Long form gaming and entertainment is where I started creatively. So how did I get to the world of YouTube, a world of evergreen content and series and editing and production? And so that's where we're going to get. But one more point before I get there, because this is the piece of counter advice that I've been carrying with myself since very early on. At a previous job, when we were setting goals for a quarter, for a year, we would talk about our key metrics, the things that we wanted to push forward, and then we would talk about drag metrics, things that we wanted to maintain, things we wanted to keep in mind and not allow to regress while we focused on growing something else. I wrote this down in my not script. Remember when I was trying not to script this, but I thought it was kind of clever, because we talk a lot about growth, but what about pruning, right? If you set out to cultivate a garden and you make sure that you've got all the right minerals and you're watering it and you've got the perfect amount of sun, if you set out to make a garden and you focus on growing it, but you never prune it, you're going to end up with a thicket. Imagine a rose bush that's never been trimmed back. It's a lot of thorns, and you start losing space for the flowers. In my notes, I said the difference between a weed and a bonsai is mostly attention and patience. And I like that thing that I wrote down, so I'm going to repeat it, even though I said this wouldn't be scripted. Something I learned very early on is that if you let growth run rampant without slowing it down sometimes, without investing in your core community, without reinforcing existing culture, the culture that you want, if you don't grow by design, you'll grow by accident. And I still remember a point to where at the time I was streaming and I had 50 people and it felt monstrous. It was so big. And I was playing a game and I got the distinct sense that the community culture, the chat room culture, was running away from me. And so I selected a game which broke all my rules. I played Hollow Knight. One of my favorite playthroughs on Twitch. Such a lovely game. And I played Hollow Knight knowing that it would result in a drop in viewership, not a gain. Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to take those core regulars, the people who were representing the type of culture, that why that I talked about last week, and reinforce that place for them. Reinforce the moderation rules, reinforce the boundaries and the mechanisms of interaction. Lay a solid foundation in the space that we cleared. And so, yeah, I'm going to talk about growth because I have to talk about growth. Like I said, content creators have to be obsessed with growth. But if you do not balance out periods of growth with periods of retention, with periods of contraction, it's a dangerous game that you're playing. And that's part of the reason that you see community spaces that run away from the original vision of their creator. They become too obsessed with growth and they forget to prune the garden. And so, okay, what? I've got all these mechanisms by which I try to select growth games. And then what? Sometimes I don't select a growth game so that I can focus on reinforcing the core community. But let's kind of zoom to today. because I'm no longer trying to bootstrap a stream on Twitch. I have an established stream. I have been consistently effective for a few years. I got large enough that I could quit my old job, and I moved to a new place and made a studio at home. Things are going pretty well. But over the last 2 years, I've seen that top line growth on Twitch flatline. And I've poked at it and I've prodded at it and I've thought about it. And I finally figured out the reason why. And the truth is I knew this, but I just didn't want to address it, right? The reason why is that at some point, Twitch is a horrible platform for growth. It's the dirty, dirty secret at the bottom of the barrel, which is that growth for content creation is all about discoverability and searchability. And Twitch is not a very good platform for either of those things. And becoming worse, actually, because of the rate at which ads are served up to people. My observation is that people are searching around on Twitch. They're browsing and they're exploring much less than they used to. Most live stream viewers on Twitch have probably something between 1 or 3 channels that they watch, and they almost never go outside of those. Hosts and raids aren't nearly as effective as they used to be. It can certainly result in some turnover, but not that much. People just don't explore. And that could be a cultural thing. It could be a tool thing. Chicken and egg. It doesn't actually matter that much to creators why people aren't exploring, browsing, searching, discovering on Twitch. The observation that they are, that's what's important, right? Or rather, are not. And so, okay. I could sit and I could complain that Twitch is not a great place for growth at some point and say that the search and browse features are not that good and that discovery is not that great. I think the real thing to do as a career content creator is ask, what are my other options? And that brings me to today. Why was I on YouTube originally? Tactically, why did I start creating content for YouTube? And the answer is, unlike Twitch, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, behind only YouTube, or rather only Google, who owns YouTube, right? So it's like you've got Google and YouTube representing the 2 largest search engines in the world. Fundamentally better space for search and discovery. Because of the evergreen nature of videos, you can build yourself out a portfolio of content that people can keep coming back to. You're not limited just by the time in which you are awake and alive and on camera, right? And so just like my first stream started because I needed a creative outlet and then since transformed into something much larger, a career and also a vision, my first YouTube video was really a simple growth consideration. I have to break outside of just Twitch as a platform in order to continue to support my living, my income, and also to expand that community and expand that vision that I set out to make initially. And since then, by the way, it has grown. Just like Twitch, it has grown. I no longer see YouTube as only a means to an end. It's not just a way to get more views to Twitch and more income. It's also a fundamentally better space for certain types of content that I make. More deep divey produced videos and tutorial content, and a great place to enshrine series that I think will stand the test of time and are interesting to watch. And so I no longer see it as just a means to an end. I see it as one piece of a larger content puzzle, which I'm sure I'll have plenty of episodes to talk about in the future. But there's another tricky bit, another problem. When I first started streaming, I was working a full-time day job. And so I ran a full-time stream by night and a full-time job by day. I did this for just shy of 2 years, and it was really freaking hard. Working 2 jobs is tough. Mad respect and props to all the people out there who want or need, to work more than their fair share, frankly, in order to support whatever, dependents or their dreams or whatever. I don't want to romanticize overworking yourself. You should get rest and you should take time for yourself as much as you're able to, as much as you're privileged to do so. But I knew that stream was a big risk. And so I wanted to work that day job to support myself and my now wife, who also works, and she's brilliant and she's doing awesome in her career. I wanted to make sure that I was contributing while I built out what might have been a pipe dream. And the truth is, for most people, it is. Content creation is an incredibly dangerous, incredibly volatile, and incredibly top-heavy career. It's a lot like acting. Very few people make it, right? And so I got to that point to where I realized that I was close enough and that I could make a kind of 2-year future plan and start trying to stream full time. And that's what I did. And when I got to this point last year to where I finally decided I need to make this YouTube content, which is a little bit of a lie because I had already been making collaborative content with Rhapsody. But when I started making content of my own, what I realized pretty quickly was I was right back to square one. I was working 2 jobs. I haven't said this, I don't think, in a video on YouTube, but that very first video that I made, this is not a video. I like it. I think it turned out well. That was a 4-minute video. It took me 14 hours to make it. And that's a conservative estimate. That was time at my computer. Scripting and recording and editing, gathering footage of the games. Prior to that video, I had never touched a piece of video editing software in my life. I'd never done any photo manipulation in my life. As I was trying to build out YouTube videos, what I found pretty early on is that I was drowning. In some ways, I found it harder than working 2 jobs, like when I first started streaming. And so I had this kind of hiccup, right, to where not only did I start to struggle to stream as much and I started streaming a little less, which might actually be fine, but then I stopped being able to produce the videos consistently. And so that became my next problem, right? Which is, what is the sustainable and healthy balance? How do I expand my content portfolio on YouTube while also defending and investing in the existing stream and stream community that I have? What's the right balance? And maybe I'm happy if this whole video just becomes a massive thank you, because the answer, it turns out, was not within me. It's outside of me. What I needed was help. What I needed was a team. What I needed was people to work with. And so a huge thank you. And many of you have already seen his work on the Storybook Brawl series and in the Strange Horticulture series, but a huge thank you to Talk Funky to Me, who approached me in an email and said, I know you're looking for an editor and you wanted someone from within your community, and who's been working closely together with me to edit some amount of the content that's on YouTube. Lately, almost all of it, while I try to figure out how to insert myself back into the exchange. An absolute lifesaver. I would, in a heartbeat, make the same decision. I'm so glad to make the time and financial investment in having a professional editor, a paid editor, because it gives me back some of that time to think about the content, to focus on getting time on stream, and to find opportunities to make those more kind of produced YouTube-focused style videos that are recorded just for YouTube, right? So huge thank you to Talk Funky to Me, who I think is doing a killer job. And so that's kind of where I am today, is now that I have a little bit more help, and that's not the only, by the way, person who has come into the fold. I've been working with designers and artists throughout my entire content creation career for things like, design language and colors for the stream, for things like emotes and panels. I commissioned recently a producer and composer to make a soundtrack for my stream in YouTube, which you can pick up at whatever cost you want over on Bandcamp. I'll add a link to that. And so over time, I'm starting to find more people who I can work with, and I get enough income from the stream that I can support more people. And so that's really been the saving grace for YouTube. Honestly, I think it's going to be the miracle that saves the channel, is having someone else to work with. And so now the next question for the future is, how can I add more of my touch back in? Not just great series that we derive from existing content, but stuff that's produced for YouTube. And so that's kind of the piece for me to solve next. But I appreciate all of you joining me on this journey, not just for Sneaky Teak Weekly, but on stream and throughout the YouTube series. Content creation's a lot of work. Let me tell you, if you've got dreams of doing this thing, don't do it because you think it's going to be easier or less work than whatever you're doing. This is way harder than my last job was in a million ways. But it's incredibly fulfilling. It's incredibly fruitful. And this year was always going to be a bit hectic, because I talk mostly about stream and YouTube, but what I'm not talking about is my house has been an active construction zone for 2 months because our hand was forced to totally renovate one of our bathrooms after we had like a massive leak. We got a dog last year who's now 14 months old, and he's a working breed dog. He's a Labrador, so he needs a lot of attention, a lot of training, a lot of time. I've definitely seen my kind of responsibilities and commitments increase from wife, stream, and basic hygiene to wife, stream, basic hygiene, dog, YouTube, house, right? And all of those things are good, but I'm certainly having to learn and relearn balance. It feels like almost every day. So thank you so much for joining me for the ride. Thanks for coming by the Sneaky Teak Weeklies. I hope you've continued to enjoy them. I'm going to intend to continue investing in these and try to get something up every week to talk about. I'll put links below for that soundtrack. It's really cool, and I hope that you check it out. Consider supporting Orchid Wolf, who was the producer who made that. I'll put link to the Discord as usual, link to the Twitch if you want to support me on Patreon, patreon.com/sneakyteak. But before I sign off, let me talk about right now, because one of my purposes for these videos is not just to give you a glimpse behind the scenes, but also logistics. What's coming up? On YouTube right now, we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as you may have noticed, Storybook Brawl highlights. We've got a backlog of those going out for a month or two. They're all really good. I handpick games that I think make for good content for YouTube, and Talk Funky to Me has done an excellent job editing them to keep them interesting, to add in some movement, and also to really help people get access to what it is I'm talking about, right? And so I think that's been killer. Strange Horticulture series will continue. That will be a completed series by the time it finishes, and it should be done in about a month, a little less than a month. We'll keep doing 4 episodes a week for now. I've got ideas for what games to start investing in next and what kind of series to work on. I still intend to finish up the Storybook Brawl primers 101 through 401. Just finding time, right? But now the time is coming back. As this house project continues and as the editor helps out, the time is coming back. But what about right now? If you are watching this video, basically as it goes live, here's a call to action. Within the next few minutes, literally now, literally today, Thursday, February 24th, I am hosting a live stream on Twitch supporting charity Trans Empowerment Project, TEP, Trans Empowerment Project. I think they're doing really great work. They hooked me with this line: "We cannot claim actual equality in this country until disabled trans people of color are thriving," which I really love. And they even have an addendum that says, "because by then everyone else's needs will have already been met." It's a very practical charity. They're helping people who need it, really marginalized communities. If you want to learn more about Trans Empowerment Project, I'll put a link below. If you'd like to donate to support Trans Empowerment Project and to support this charity stream that I'm running, to be clear, all the proceeds go to TEP, okay? I'm not taking home anything from your donation, but you know, it builds as part of the event. If you'd like to donate to Trans Empowerment Project, I'll put the donation link below. And if you are encouraged to stop by, I certainly would be glad to have you. No pressure at all to speak if you're a lurker. You know, if you're a little shy or you're tuning in from work or whatever, lurkers are the lifeblood of Twitch. So there's never an obligation to come and chat. You should feel more than welcome to stop by. It should be a really fun evening. So hope to see you there for the charity stream for Trans Empowerment Project. Thanks again for stopping by the Sneaky Teak Weekly, and I'll look forward to catching all of you again next week in the next Sneaky Teak Weekly. Peace out.